يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا وقودها الناس والحجارة. This is something I think, brothers and sisters, that we all should have this memorized. وقودها الناس والحجارة. It's an ayah that is a constant reminder to the Muslims, especially the Muslim families and the people who are responsible in the families, especially the fathers and the mothers, the responsibility that they have to the next generation, the responsibility that they have to the family, the responsibility that they have to in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what Allah Azza wa Jal has given them, and the reasons for what your children will achieve in life, the success in the dunya and the akhirah. And remember, last time we mentioned the ayah from Surah Al-Baqarah, أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون. That who are the people who are muflihun, falah, who are the people who are successful. So inshallah, what we're going to talk about today are the some of the building blocks, let's put it this way, that the Prophet ﷺ utilized in order to build a certain level of confidence amongst the Muslim children. Again, keep something in mind that we are talking about children. Some of them were at the ages of 2.5, 2 years, 4 years, 5 years. Some of them in their adolescence, adolescence, you could say maybe 14, 12, 15, 16, maybe even up to 18, but most of them are under 10. So building of confidence, especially between Rasul Sallallahu and the children, you can see, inshallah, from the examples that I'll give, brothers and sisters, that the Prophet Sallallahu really did a lot of work to build that confidence to have in the Muslim youth, especially to build a relationship with himself and them. Keep in mind, this generation that is growing up with the Sahaba, with him, along with the Sahaba, is the generation that will be the generation that will take Islam to the corners of the earth. They will be the leadership after him and after the the generation of the Sahaba who are with him. So now going back, so what did he do to make the children fall in love with him? Why were the Sahaba so keen, especially the young ones also, these, the 12, 13-year-olds and 10 years old, so keen in wanting to practice what the Prophet ﷺ was telling them to practice? One of the things the Prophet ﷺ spent a lot of time with them. I mean, whatever time that he could give them, he did give them. And because you cannot love someone, brothers and sisters, obviously, if you don't know who that person is. And we say the same thing till today. Why is it that our youth, when you talk to them about the Prophet ﷺ, they barely know anything about Rasulullah. They barely know anything about the Sahaba of Rasulullah. They barely know anything about the Seerah of Rasulullah. And then we ask them to love Rasulullah ﷺ. We ask them, when we hear that something happened, if there is the things that we see, whether it's the burning of the Quran or the cartoons that these foolish people they make, and following the rules and regulations sent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the Prophet ﷺ, when we see that it's the youth or the nation not following it, there is a reason for that, especially the youth who don't know the Prophet ﷺ. So you can see how much work the Prophet ﷺ put in there. For instance, if you look at even Umar ibn Khattab, we see a lot of work even done by the parents. For instance, you have Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh, and you always hear a conversation between Abdullah ibn Umar and Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh. Because right after Umar ibn Khattab became Muslim, Abdullah ibn Umar became Muslim, and then and that's why there are a lot of hadith as we go into classes next week. Because in this session we don't have as much the conversation between them, but you do see that a lot of hadith that came to us by them, and some of them are conversations between Umar ibn Khattab and Abdullah ibn Umar. The other thing, brothers and sisters, inshallah we'll see, is that we don't see as big of a generational gap between the Sahaba and their children. Even if some of them maybe 10 years, things like that, but meaning that the Sahaba were aware of the problems that existed in the society. They were aware of what was happening around them. And they were aware of the problems that the youth were going through. So they were addressing them as part of addressing the society in general. So it wasn't that they were disconnected. And that, again, is going back to the responsibility of the parents, that parents will be accountable on the day of judgment on about what it is that they left behind. What kind of work did they do to make sure that the children are worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Now let's go into some of the hadith. The other thing, just before that, the ayah, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةٌ لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Of course, in this ayah, brothers and sisters, we're talking about mercy, but the Prophet ﷺ was obviously very merciful. Allah Azza wa Jal saying that, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةٌ لِلْعَالَمِينَ. We have sent you but nothing as mercy to mankind. But this mercy came through with a vision, brothers. It comes from a vision, brothers and sisters. Meaning, it wasn't that the Prophet ﷺ was just merciful at certain times. The Prophet ﷺ was merciful all the time. Yes, he had the responsibility, meaning that in general, the Prophet ﷺ was a very merciful person. He was very easygoing person. He was a person you want to be around all the time. Now, again, we are talking about children here. The children don't want to be around someone that they cannot connect to. They cannot see how they can relate to them. If they can't relate to you, they will not be around you. And I see that also here, brothers and sisters, we have a summer program and things like this, that we have 60, 70 kids coming to us almost on a daily basis, Monday through Thursday. And then we see when we teach them, and at the same time, when we are playing with them, we have an hour program where we play basketball with them or whatever it is, but it's 2.5 hours of teaching and then 1 hour of basketball. It's not just entertainment. It's a lot of teaching that they are responsible for, learning for. There's exams, there is learning about Rasulullah, there's learning about Allah Azza wa Jal, there's learning about usul, for what the kids that age should know. And then they're accountable if they don't do their work, if they don't do their homework, if they don't pass exams. But at the same time, they see us playing with them. They see us, eating with them. We do a lot of other things with them so that they can see us not just as teachers, but also friends. So that's another important thing. Now, why are we putting all this effort and time in the youth? Number one is because we know the importance of the youth. As the Prophet ﷺ said, take care of my youth, as they were the ones who helped me, supported me, while the elders, they left me. So because they are our future. Now, Anas ibn Malik, just before that, again, the mercy issue, brothers and sisters, remember this, the general personality of the Prophet ﷺ was someone he was not a moody person, right? He was not someone that, okay, I had a bad day, so now let me go home and just lash out at my family. One day I'm like this, and the next day I'm like that. No. So in general, the Prophet ﷺ, again, as I said, was someone do you want to be around, approachable, go and ask questions to, even though there are a lot of things that he's going through. As he's going through, there's battles going on, there is responsibility to the Muslims, there is shuhada, he's the head of the state. Keep that in mind. So he's dealing a lot of things, but at the same time, he understands how to deal with different sectors of society, especially the children. Now, Anas ibn Malik, radiallahu anhu, he has a hadith. He says the Prophet ﷺ was the most merciful amongst mankind and the best when it came to manners. And he goes on to say, he said, I had a younger brother whose name was Abu Umair. Now, many of you know this story. But an amazing thing about this hadith, brothers and sisters, this is narrated in Tirmidhi, and Imam Tirmidhi and also Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah, both of them, they have a lot to say about this hadith regarding the way the Prophet was with children. Then let me just say the hadith was that Abu Umair had a bird that died. Now, in this case, Abu Umair, even though they're calling him with this kunya, he was no more than probably 3 years old. Okay, literally maybe 2.5, 3 years old is what the muhaddithin they say. So the Prophet ﷺ goes, and there is 3 versions of this hadith. One, the Prophet ﷺ entered the house and he says, is Umair upset? Why is he crying? Another narrator says he comes in and he says to him, oh, Ya Umair, what happened to Sughair? And he's talking because the bird had a name. And he's using the name to say that, okay, Ya Umair, oh Abu Umair, what happened here? What's going on? Let's come and pray with me and let's, make dua and things like this, comforting the child and making sure that the child is someone, should be comforted at the time. It's a loss for us. It may not be something big that you might look at, but still, it was a pet. I mean, he loved them enough to name the pet, and the pet dies, and the child is crying. And the Prophet ﷺ goes and he is comforting. For instance, like when he said, Ya Umair, Ya Abu Umair, what happened to Nughair? Now, what Imam Tirmidhi says, he says in the comment to this hadith, he calls the boy by kunya, giving him a kunya, and that was a respectable thing to do, right? Doesn't mean, obviously, that's his kunya. What doesn't mean that he has a child, doesn't mean he was married, doesn't mean anything. But the Prophet ﷺ gives the boy a kunya. That is the sunnah, that practiced till today. Ibn Hajar, he says, you can ask a question even though you know the answer. You know the answer, but you're speaking to a child. You can ask a question, a rhetorical question, kind of something that you already know, but you're asking in a way that you are showing concern. That's one of the things Ibn Hajar says. The other thing he said is that you can, when you're speaking to children, it's not you should, and sometimes it's come down to the understanding that they have. There's nothing wrong with that. In order to come down to that level, to understand what the child is going through. And then basically what they're saying is that, look, you're talking about a prophet, right? This is a prophet of Allah, the last and the final messenger of Allah Azza wa Jal on earth. And the way the humbleness of the Prophet ﷺ while dealing with the children. And another thing that he says that, imagine, we would not have known this hadith and the name of the pet or even the name of the boy if it was not recorded. Yani what happened between Rasul ﷺ and the child. So we have this hadith in Tirmidhi, we have a comment by people like Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, we have, you're talking about someone who Sahib al-Sharh al-Bukhari, somebody who did the whole Sharh of al-Bukhari. People like that are forced to look at this event, make sure that the people know this hadith and also comment on the hadith. Meaning, it's very obvious that the Prophet ﷺ wanted people to know how to deal with children. So to continue, inshallah, the mercy of the Prophet ﷺ. Brothers and sisters, very famous hadith regarding the woman who committed zina. She was married, and when she came to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ, and she said basically to the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, that I have committed zina and the had needs to be put on me. Now, what's amazing about this whole hadith is that the Prophet ﷺ did not right away say, okay, you committed zina, khalas, yani bring the woman and stone her to death. That's it. The had has to be implemented. Meaning, yes, the had has to be implemented because she came and, she incriminated herself. She basically came and she said, in general case, of course, you need 4 witnesses and all, things like that. But in this case, the woman herself said it 4 times. Yes, I did it. Yes, I did it. And, I want to purify myself. But the Prophet ﷺ told her, go and give birth first. 9 months pass by. She comes back. Then says, okay, now go back and feed this child for 2 years. That's the right of a child. And they'll go back and come back. And now the thing what I want the brothers and sisters, and that we need to understand, brothers and sisters, that love that the Prophet ﷺ had, imagine, why is he doing all of this? There's a child involved. There's a baby. There's a, responsibility. Who will take care of this child? How will this child grow up without that love of the mother? What will this child, yes, as he grows up, he will know about the hudud. Yes, he will know about what happened, because this hadith is famous throughout the books, and the story is famous throughout the books. People will know. He will also know. But he will also know, how did the Prophet ﷺ deal with this? He will also know that, the Prophet ﷺ waited, go have the child. I came from this. Then the Prophet ﷺ made sure that I'm fed, that I was breastfed, the love, the care, the hugging, all of that is needed by a mother to a child to take care of those things. That it wasn't just about, khalas, punish the person. No, the child had that type of importance that the Prophet ﷺ made sure that, look, go have the child, come back, and then we'll see what we're doing. And that, even though, brothers and sisters, the hadith actually says that she used to walk around in the markets. It wasn't that she was jailed. It wasn't that there was guards around her all the time watching that she runs away. If she wanted to, she could have ran away with the child, and nobody would have went after her. But yes, the taqwa of that woman, but at the same time, the way the society was built, that the Prophet ﷺ has given this woman this much time. Why? She's pregnant. Then why? She has a baby. She should be taken care of. And one of the things, as you read these hadith, brothers, regarding children, brothers and sisters, another thing I found, why is it that children grew up around the Sahaba, around the Prophet ﷺ, many things that came very natural to them. And one of the things was, for instance, lowering the gaze. This is a big problem today with the youth, right? Everyone is concerned about the effects of pornography on the youth, on the effects of the social media. It's summertime, the kind of garbage that we have to see on a daily basis, and lowering the gaze constantly. People, Muslims, constantly, you are bombarded by nonsense and the nakedness constantly. The Sahaba, there was naturally the way they lowered their gaze, the honor and the respect was taught to them from the time they were children. When we will get to this topic when we talk about sexual relationships and how that was built, how the Rasul built that. But there were many things that were naturally built in the Sahaba, and that was because of their closeness, the way they saw the Rasul ﷺ, and the way they saw their own parents practicing the deen, the care for the deen, the care for expansion of Islam, the care for making sure that not just them, but their children are constantly worried about going to Jannah. I'm not saying that they were perfect. Sahaba were not perfect. No human being is perfect other than the Anbiya. They are masoom. But certain type of shame, right, haya, that was installed in the people, that at the least they would be so careful about doing something open. And because, like for instance, you had issues where if somebody would openly commit something, they would not take that person as a witness in society, right? They would not take things from them. You could not become a scholar. You could not imagine if somebody comes and gives you hadith. I mean, if you go ever study usul hadith, for instance, you will see that people who openly sin, they would not be considered person that you could go and seek anything from. Forget about knowledge. Now, the thing that happens, as you know, that later on, that woman, she does get punished. And it was Khalid bin Walid, he picks up the rock and he throws it, and she starts bleeding. And Khalid bin Walid is kind of, he looks at the blood and he says few things. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he said, I want you to understand, Ya Khalid, that the forgiveness the mercy that has come down because of the forgiveness of this woman. This forgiveness did not just go to her, but the forgiveness covered all of Medina. Again, the Prophet ﷺ bringing the human face that yes, this is a punishment, but this punishment is there, but don't forget the mercy that came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So some of the scholars, they commented on that also and said that sometimes when we look at things, we have the like the way kind of Khalid bin Walid looked at. But look at the way the Prophet ﷺ looked at even while the punishment was happening. So again, the whole idea was that, look, a child, a woman who's pregnant, it shows you how the society took care of its people. And the reason I'm just one more issue with this, brothers and sisters, we find today babies in the dump. We have test tube babies in this society. We find kids who were born addicted to drugs, marijuana, and so much. It's a very common thing in the inner cities. And in just the other day, we had a sister who came to us. She had a baby, and she said that the baby had to be removed from the mother because the mother was so addicted and constantly high on drugs that this baby would be so neglected so her sister basically took the baby. And when you hear these kind of things, and this is just because the sister became Muslim, so she took the baby, and the rest of the family is still kafir. And so you see that when we see the kind of violence in this society, the kind of killing that's happening in schools, mass shootings, every other day, some kid is picking up AR-15 and just shooting and killing kids. There is a reason for that. And the reason for that is lack of mercy, not only within the people, but also within the nizam. The system itself does not provide that kind of care, that kind of mercy. If you have the money, if you have the means, if you have the resources, you'll be taken care of. But the rest, it's a jungle out there. And we see that on a daily basis, what happens to the poor. We deal with them. Where is the mercy? So the next topic here, for instance, the issue with fatherless societies, motherless societies, 60-70% divorce rate. On the top of that, homosexuality. On the top of that, this family structure where there's two mothers and two fathers nowadays. Then if there's father and the mother, the father is missing, or the mother is missing, or both are missing. The idea that you were a mistake. Imagine children are being told that you were a mistake. Now, the reason I'm going to this, brothers and sisters, is that there is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ here. Hassan radiallahu anh, Hassan and Hussein, of course, both of them, they were kissed a lot by Rasulullah. They are hugged a lot by the Prophet. And there is not just him, but other Sahaba in this case, I just have this hadith here. And he says that Rasulullah would constantly put his hand on the top of the children and make dua. Like you have the very famous dua of Jafar, Abdullah ibn Jafar, that the Prophet, and we will talk about that too. But in this case, Hassan radiallahu anh, he says the Prophet was kissing him, and he was putting his hand on his head and making dua for him and things like this. One Sahabi, he was watching this, and he says, Ya Rasulullah, I had 10 children. I have never kissed not even one. Imagine that. A father who has 10 children. Now, of course, keep something in mind. You're talking about men who used to bury their children, especially their daughters, alive. You could see that, what kind of hearts these people carried before Islam. So there was a lot of harshness. There is a scholar, he says that when you look at some of their personalities, it was like, of course, before Islam, and that some of the harshness came later too, that you have They lived in the deserts and the hearts of the desert people, desert, any harshness, toughness, but not for the right reasons sometimes. And of course, later on, they use that for the right reasons. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. But he says, Ya Rasulullah, 10 children, but I've never done that. And then the Prophet ﷺ, look what he says. Oh, he doesn't say to him, oh, you're a tough man. I like that. These kids are going to grow up this way, that way. He says, the one who does not show mercy will not be shown mercy. And subhanAllah, the one who shows no mercy will not be shown mercy. And this is why there's a statement that a documentary put together, brothers and sisters, saying that, it's a part of a whole series that says that children who are not shown, who are not cuddled, for instance, who are not shown mercy while they're children, they're not kissed, they're not loved, they don't have proper shelter, they don't have proper care by the family, by the mother or father, you find that society to be very violent. In general, that kind of society grows up to be a society, those children grow up to be very violent in general. And this is, of course, as you know, there's another study that says that girls especially, if they are not kissed by the father, if they're not cared by the brother or the grandparents, or especially male figures in the household who take care of them, who protect them, who are there for them, those children, those female daughters, especially girls, are very much prone to abuse, are prone to not only abuse within the relationship, but also being abused by other men outside the society. And that's why we say the kind of things that we see, that because children are not getting that care, the date rape, the 15-year-old, 16-year-old girls, 14-year-old girls are out there looking for attention, seeking attention because they can't get that attention at home. What kind of attention that build confidence? Fathers who were there, who taught them how to be, what is a father? The responsibility of a father, the love that father gives, responsibility of a brother. Who is a brother? What kind of love that the brother has for his sisters, and things like that. And seriously, brothers and sisters, this is something that is missing in this society. You really see that. I mean, it's very hard. It's kind of course, they have made things that are not normal into normal things, right? When you see fahisha, and fahisha in Arabic language, it's not just that zina or adultery and fornication, things like that. Fahisha is even usage of language that is not proper, like the language where the word is used, the dress code, the way the people dress, the kind of language that is used to the open display of things without any shamelessness, having no haya. The mothers, they exposing things that should not be exposed other than to their husband. And the same way with the father, who there is no care, there is no haya in him. He's like somebody who allows whatever to take place, but has no care on how the daughters or the children are growing up. But again, going back, the children that are not loved in the home. Now, what does that love mean? Also something that we need to think about, brothers and sisters. Love does not just mean that you're always kissing and cuddling. Obviously, that's something that we do with our children. But if you love them, you will prepare them for Jannah. If you love them, you will give the time that is needed for them to know the Prophet ﷺ, because you want them to follow the best personality, the best of mankind, humanity. You're not leaving them. Like when I asked a lot of children when we are teaching, brothers and sisters, so do you know Superman? Yes, they know. Do you know Batman? They know. Catwoman? They know. All this garbage they know. And I said, how is it that you will know Batwoman, Catwoman, all this nonsense, and then we expect our children to grow up like human beings while the people that they look up to are animals? I mean, imagine Batman is, you're saying, oh, why are these kids growing up like animals? So, well, the person who he looks up to is a bat. The person who he looks up to is a spider. the person she looks up to is a cat. And this was happening so often that now today, I'm not surprised that children want to be cats and dogs and bugs. I'm not surprised at all. Subhanallah, where, you know, examples are animals. And subhanallah, dear brothers and sisters, this is why when we look at our history, right, how constantly we are being told, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ, and the person, the one that you're supposed to look up to, if you are believers, who is it? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is the Rasul of Allah. He's the messenger of the Creator who created everything that exists. You are giving your children someone to follow that cannot go wrong, that is guided. وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. Everything he does is guided by the wahi. So these are things that we may not think about, but this does have effects on children, brothers and sisters. You know, we have a high school here, and I'm just mentioning this because this is the silliness of a society. You know, they call them what, fairies, is it? Right? Yeah. Imagine high schools. I heard some parents are petitioning, asking that because some of their children, they identify as cats and dogs or bugs, and so they want the bathrooms to be litter boxes for these children. I mean, where are we going now? Imagine a youth, a young person, a baby that is born and has no clue what their identity is. Not even, forget even the issue of Muslim, that they are Muslim, all of that. Even to identity as a male or female. And this goes to purpose, and a society, child that it grows up purposeless, without a purpose, will constantly suffer. So the Prophet ﷺ, brothers and sisters, constantly from day one. You know, I'll give you an example. It's subhanallah, and this example will come again. Fatima radiallahu anha, one time she was calling Hussein, I think it was, or Hassan radiallahu anha, and she acted, she had something in her hand, but the way she did it was like she was showing for what they were young, 2.5, 3-year-old, so they can come to her. The Prophet ﷺ was observing this, and then the Prophet ﷺ went to her and said, "Don't lie. Do you have something in your hand?" And then the Prophet ﷺ said, "Yes." No, I mean, Fatima said, "No, Ya Rasulullah, I do actually have something in my hand. I'm not just, making them come to me." Why? The Prophet ﷺ saying, don't teach deception. Don't teach them from this age that they should do this to other human beings. Imagine such a small thing. Such a small thing. And the other day, we at the center, we were passing out mangoes. And there was this parent, of course, I'm not mentioning parents' names, but I'm just saying that, look, what are we teaching our children? The Prophet observes that from Fatima radiallahu anha and says right away, hey, make sure you actually have something in your hand, because you don't want Hassan or Hussein to learn to deceive, or their mother lied, or that they were deceived. No, you don't want to teach that. So we were giving out these boxes of mangoes and things like that. A parent actually came, took what they have the right of, they took it, they went in the car, then the father came back with the child and wanted an extra box. It's one thing to say, I want an extra box. No problem. If it's your rest, you will get it. But he said, no, I didn't get it. While the child is next to him, said, no, we got for everybody. And the father turns around and smacks on the top, back of the head of the child, saying, didn't I tell you, don't say anything? I mean, do you don't think that child will ever remember that? That is specifically when it's related to pain or pleasure, pain or pleasure, anything that to an incident, every child remembers that. And we will get to that example here, inshallah. So keep something in mind when we were talking about why it's so important that you show care, that you care for, Umar ibn Khattab, brothers and sisters, he used to say that be like a baby in the household, especially to fathers. with the way you deal with your wife, the way you deal with your children, the way you deal with your daughters, young kids. When a father comes home, it's not that the moment father comes home, everybody runs away somewhere. No. But this is especially coming from Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh. It's an amazing statement that, behave. He said this to the man, behave like a baby with family, especially with wife and children. But when he is called to duty, then he reacts. Then he reacts like a man. At home, he's a certain way. But the moment the call of duty comes, oh, it's time to go fi sabilillah jihad. Oh, it's time to go and pray salah. Oh, it's time. And this is something that we also see from the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ came whenever he would be with the family, he would be helping and doing this. The moment the call for salah came, the response right away, he would leave as if he didn't know. He would just get up and he would go, oh, as-salah, as-salah, as-salah. So what the children know, yes, he cares for us at the same time, but look how he cares for Allah Azza wa Jal. So he's teaching the children. The moment Allah says, Allahu Akbar, hayya ala salah, hayya al falah, this is success, this is falah, this is salah. So the problem, what we see today, brothers and sisters, the opposite, where men are trying to be, their examples today are Andrew Tate and Allah knows what, Allah knows whose these responsibilities are, they look up to. And we see that the constant problems within the families. Literally, I had a sister who came to me and he said, in the household, my husband has lectures or talks or these things constantly being played by Andrew Tate in the house. Imagine children listening to this nonsense. There's not Quran going on in the household. It's not the lessons about the Sahaba, the bravery of the Sahaba, the selflessness of the Sahaba, the rajula of the Sahaba, the muru'a of the Sahaba, the leadership of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the Surah Al-Tawbah, Surah Al-Anfar, Surah Al-Araf. No, none of this. This is not the stories talking about, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Yusuf alayhi salam, Yaqub alayhi salam, the sacrifices given by these Anbiya. This is not what the children are learning. What they are learning is people like this, filthy people, who Allah knows what, will come out of them. So it's very important. And then the reason I'm saying that, brothers and sisters, that we all knew the personality of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh. We all knew the toughness of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh. This was a man, the shaitan would go the other way when he saw Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh coming. And that's why you see, but look what the way manhood was taught to them. Abdullah ibn Zubair, the youngest Sahaba, very young, Abdullah, the son of Zubair ibn Awam, he said one time we were playing out on the streets. Abdullah ibn Zubair, by the way, even though from a very young time in his life, he was a very political, very involved person, and became very, of course, this is one of the reasons why later on he also takes the Khilafah in Mecca and he's killed. But I just want you to understand who this kid was as he grew up in the household of the Prophet ﷺ. He's his grandfather and his son of Asma bint Abu Bakr, son of Zubair ibn Awam. The grandfather is Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh. So you can just imagine the household that he's growing up in. Who is, Asma, someone radiallahu anha who was there for the Prophet ﷺ when he was leaving to Medina. She's the one who's covered in the tracks. She's a woman. She understands what is going to happen, especially, now the Prophet ﷺ is being called to go to Medina, protecting her father, protecting Rasulullah ﷺ. Her son is Zubair ibn Awam, and he says one time that Umar ibn Khattab says that he was going and the kids were playing. Children are playing. A lot of the children, they left when they saw Umar ibn Khattab. Abdullah ibn Zubair is standing there. So he went up to him and he said, how come you didn't go away like everybody else went away? Abdullah ibn Zubair, being young, I think at the time he could have been 10 years old. He's looking at Umar ibn Khattab. He says, what did I do that I need to run away from you? There is a space. He said to him, there's enough space on the street, you can go by like this. So he said to him, like father, you are like your father. Because his father is who? Zubair ibn Awwam. And Zubair ibn Awwam, being a father, he used to take his son, young son, put him on the back of the horse. And he, when the battle of, when they fought the Romans the first time, he actually had Abdullah ibn Zubair behind him on the horse while he would go through the ranks of the Romans. A father teaching his son bravery. Inshallah, we'll also see a father teaching the family tafsir and how it happens so naturally. SubhanAllah, we talk about in one of the ayat, and how the whole family literally learns tafsir of this surah, of this ayah, and the fiqh of this ayah, the haram and the halal that they learn from this ayah, inshallah, next time. But these were the people who grew up around the Prophet ﷺ. Just the love of Abdullah ibn Zubair, dear brothers and sisters. You know, Abdullah ibn Zubair, one time the Prophet ﷺ, he did cupping, and imagine after the blood that was left, he chooses Abdullah ibn Zubair, tells him, go and get rid of this blood. And Abdullah ibn Zubair, he says, I was looking for every possible way. Where do I get rid of the blood of Rasulullah? And he said, I couldn't find a way. I couldn't find a place where you're talking about the blood of the Prophet. And he said he just drank it. So he went back to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ knows something is, what has happened. So he kind of tells him, Abdullah, what did you do with the blood? He doesn't want to say anything. Then he says, what did you do? And then he says, I drank it. Of course, it's, in general, brothers and sisters, you don't drink blood. I'm not telling you to go and drink blood and things like this. But what I am saying is that look at the love Rasulullah built in the hearts of these kids. There's a lot of things here, but especially if you're working in a community and you're working, inshallah, all of you are working for the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, not only, inshallah, not just in a superficial way, but in a way that, inshallah, the deen of Allah comes back. And imagine the leadership that you have around you is so pure and so brave and so sincere. The love they have for Allah Azza wa Jal, it's all done for the Creator. Everyone has a higher goal, a purpose, clear. Every single person, the father, the mother, the Prophet around them, everyone around them is constantly, their concern is to please Allah Azza wa Jal. Right? The carefulness, the selflessness they constantly showed. And you can see that even in the Prophet how much he cared for them. So now this kid, he does that. I'm not surprised. Then the Prophet said a statement that how can hellfire touch a body that has the blood of a Nabi floating in him? But that was just to acknowledge in some way that I can see the love that you have for me. Now, please don't go into a fiqh ruling over this issue and all that. No, drinking blood is haram and all that. But I'm just saying that there were some things that the Sahaba, these young ones, were so willing to do anything for Rasulullah. And that only comes from caring the same way, giving back the same way. Now, this is why the Prophet ﷺ also said, give gifts, love each other and give gifts, giving gifts to each other also, it is part of, and the reason I'm mentioning this is a hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, and this is hadith in Sahih Muslim. He says, every season the fruits of Medina would come, especially the dates. So the Prophet ﷺ would, first of all, he would call all the people, right? The poor and the rich, and everybody would come and they would get part of it. But the first thing, what he would do, all of the children of Medina would line up first. And then he would give all of the children. Once the children are good, they got what they need, and then it would be distributed to the rest. And imagine, everybody's waiting for their turn to get what they need, but who are the ones who are given precedence? Number one, the children of Medina. There is no way that the children of Medina would not remember that every time after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, where this season would come, every time the season for dates would come, they would go to Masjid al-Nabawi or wherever they decided, as obviously the population was growing. But can you imagine that the children in Medina would say, Subhanallah, when the Prophet ﷺ was there, every single time, every single season, the Prophet ﷺ would make sure the children of Medina were given the foods first before anybody else. That's how we get the hadith anyway. It's the children who are saying that. Of course, from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh, but the children can never forget. And there is a hadith, brothers and sisters, in Tabarani. This really is another amazing hadith here. Ayman radiallahu anha, she came to the Prophet ﷺ and she said to Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, Hassan and Hussein are missing. Missing in a sense that there is no adult with them. No one knows where they are, but they are missing. So everyone, of course, gets up and is looking for Hassan and Hussein, including Rasulullah ﷺ. It wasn't that Rasulullah ﷺ is sitting there saying, everybody go look for him, I got a lot of work to do. No, Rasulullah ﷺ himself is out there looking. And they got to a point, they said that they found the children, both of them together. They were actually hugging each other. They could say that they were scared, of course. And Rasulullah ﷺ, when he saw them, there was a snake that was there. And this is again hadith in Tabarani. And the way the hadith goes is that, I wish I had it written down in Arabic, but it says that when the Prophet ﷺ went to get Hassan Hussein, the snake looked at the Prophet ﷺ, and it was as if he was having a conversation with the Prophet ﷺ. There was a moment of observation between the snake, and the hadith says that. The hadith says that as if the Prophet ﷺ is having a conversation with that snake. And imagine Hassan and Hussein are watching this. And after the snake observes, looks at the Prophet ﷺ, there is almost like an exchange of some sort. And then the snake turns around and leaves. And when the snake leaves, the Prophet ﷺ goes, gets hold of both of the children, Hassan and Hussein, holds them, hugs them, kisses them, comforts them, takes care of them. And then when he's going back to their home, what is he doing? He has them both on each shoulder. Can you imagine, brothers and sisters? I just want to know, think about this. He's a grandfather, of course. And he's the Prophet of Allah. You know why I keep saying that, brothers and sisters? That, Umar ibn Khattab came one time and he was saying to the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, look at the lifestyles of Kisro and like the head of Rome and head of Persia, and look at the lifestyle that they live, and the rich and all this, kibar and arrogance and this, I'm too big to be like this, and I can't have the community see me that way. Oh, I can't have the community kissing my own daughters, my own children, and I can't be, I'm a tough guy. But Rasulullah is Rasulullah in every aspect of life. He is Rasulullah as a military general. He is Rasulullah as the head of a state. He is Amir al-Jihad. He is Rasulullah when it comes to dealing with affairs of the woman. Every issue that the woman has to deal with, they had to come to the Prophet. Ask him about this, ask him about that, ask him about marriage, ask him about this. When it came to children, okay, what do we do with the children? From the time that they are born, now they're this age, what do I do? What do I do with them? What do I do with them? Imagine just a simple thing. Fatima, make sure that you have something in your hand, because you don't want them to learn behavior like this. And Fatima radiallahu anha saying that way, Ya Rasulullah, no, of course I have something. Right? Sunnah, wearing shoes with your right leg, or put your right foot in there. How did they learn that? They saw the Prophet do it and teach them. Or how do you get up for tahajjud? Inshallah, you will see that hadith from Abdullah ibn Abbas. How old is Abdullah ibn Abbas? 14, 12 years old, something like this. Inshallah, you'll see that too. So, again, the reason I'm saying that, brothers and sisters, is that a society in which the children are taken care of, and taken care of means not that the parents are missing in action, not that the children have no clue who the parents are. Not that the children are being told that you were a mistake. To give you an example, brothers and sisters, the other day on NPR, this society has become so shameless and so heartless, brothers and sisters, that we Because, and in some ways, I think we have also become capitalists, that we don't even feel and sense what's happening in society. Imagine NPR, which is a very known program here, 91.5. It always talks about news and things like this. They had a woman talking about the abortion issues that are going back and forth between the Republicans and the Democrats and things like this. And this woman was giving an interview, and they were asking her regarding, she was the first one, I guess, supposedly, that had to leave one of these states where abortion is illegal to come to a state where she had to get the baby aborted, or she couldn't actually. No. So her issue was that she was the first one, in many ways, had to have the baby, because even though she wanted to abort the baby, but she had to have the baby because it's illegal in that state. Now she's on radio and she's saying, my dreams were killed. My career was killed. I already had a child. I wanted to give him the best, or her the best. And me and my husband were planning all, to wait certain amount of time and do this and do that and whatever it is. But now imagine for a moment that the child one day grows up and hears this program, listens to the mother saying that having you destroyed my dreams, having you destroyed my life, having you destroyed my career. Whatever the issue might have been, but there's a sense in your mind that, look, it has happened. Now I have to take care of this baby. Not that you make, but imagine that baby growing up like this, that I was nothing but a mistake. And hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. So, brothers and sisters, the point making here is that make sure that you are looking out for your children and you know where your children are. Rasulullah ﷺ is out there himself looking for Hassan Hussein. He wants to know, where is Hassan? Where is Hassan? Who is it? Is there enemy out there? Did somebody grab them? Did they get kidnapped? Is there a man or woman, boy, whoever thinks that they can take advantage of my child? Do we know where our children are Friday nights? Do we know where our children are? They're supposedly at the masjid, but what they're being taught by these imams? All of this. Did they ever go and ask him, what did you learn in Salat al-Jum'ah today? Heck, did you even go to Salat al-Jum'ah? Many times during school year, especially, I talk to the high schoolers and stuff like this. They say, oh, my parents, they tell me that I better make sure that I attend this chemistry course or math course, because even though that time I should be in Jum'ah prayer. Are we teaching our own children to put Islam as a secondary, thirdly matter, and the first thing that should matter is the dunya? While Allah is the one who provides, are we teaching them that Allah provides, Allah is Razzaq, Allah is the one who sustains, maintains, He's Ar-Rabb, He's Rabbul Alameen? While we are telling, and then when they come home, we tell them, oh, did you pray Asr? The kid says, no, I have homework. And then he grows up like that. And one point you tell them, hey, why don't you, fear Allah? They said, well, you taught me actually not to fear Allah. You taught me to fear the dunya. If I don't do this, I'm not going to make money. So this is more important for me than going and praying. He gets scared when he has to pray at work. He can't take a stand and say, no, this is time for prayer. I just need 5 minutes, 10 minutes to go and make salah. Yeah, I have to go to Jummah prayer. I cannot miss Jummah prayer. I have to make sure that even if it's lunch break, I need to go and pray. Lunch is not important that day. So brothers and sisters, please, and this is another thing. Now, let's just go to, there is last hadith, last two hadith that we'll talk about here. This is an amazing hadith that comes from actually Fatima radiallahu anha. And this is hadith that has no, it's just what happened between Fatima radiallahu anha and Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So of course somebody is writing what happened, but it was an observation. Yani there's no words being exchanged, right? So somebody's not writing the words of the Prophet from here, saying that, okay, this happened and the Prophet said this and the other person said this. No. Fatima radiallahu anha enters the house, or enters the place where the Prophet is. The Prophet gets up, kisses her on forehead, moves, makes her sit in his place, and he then sits next to her. This is just the observation by the narrator who's narrating this hadith, saying that Fatima, yani imagine your daughter, you get up, Prophet of Allah, the ruler, the statesman, Amirul Jihad, thousands of Sahaba that love you, invades you, no one was loved and is loved till today. His daughter comes, he gets up, moves, kisses his daughter on the forehead, she sits, and then he sits. Especially in a society that used to, imagine, kill daughters, kill their children alive. These are, the Prophet ﷺ is teaching. He's teaching, constantly teaching mercy, respect, manners. You know, the amazing thing, brothers and sisters, that the Prophet ﷺ used to be the first ones that used to say salam to the children, even before the children saying salam. And the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is the one who says the salam first is better than the one who looks. All of these hadith are there. So, there is a fiqh point in this, and then, you know, they said that, okay, you know, unfortunately, this event, it just became a fiqh issue. Can someone, a scholar, stand up for someone that is not a scholar? Can, you know, should this happen? This became a manner issue, but, and this is discussed, right? You know, should somebody get up in a gathering who is more learned than others? And all these discussions happen in the fiqh books and, you know, for among students of knowledge or just manners and things like that, kitabul, you know, adab and things like this. But the thing, what the comment on this is that Ali radiallahu anh had to compete with the Prophet ﷺ in how Rasulullah ﷺ dealt with his daughter. So there was no way that Ali radiallahu anh could be someone that could be abusive, that would have abused Ali Fatima radiallahu anh, because he is looking at the way Rasulullah ﷺ dealt with Fatima radiallahu anh. And this is one of the comments that was there in this hadith, when the hadith was there, and saying that, subhanallah, you know, again, that in a society where girls are not given importance, you know, young children, girls, boys, whoever, and you see that society turns very violent as it goes on. Now here is last hadith, the brothers. This is a very interesting hadith of Khalid bin Khalid ibn Sa'id. This is she's saying this when Khalid is saying this when she became a mother. They were from Ahbash, they were Habashi, you know, this area of Eritrea in Ethiopia. And so they had moved there and they had actually stayed there. And then they came back to Medina later on, but they spent a lot of time in that area of Habasha. So what happened is that she says when she was in Medina, imagine this, I came with my father. At the time she was very, very young. But she remembers this. She said, I came with my father, and at that time I was a young child. I was wearing this yellow shirt. And the Prophet ﷺ, the moment he saw me, he kept saying, Sana, Sana. And Sana, Sana is actually, seems to be a word that is not Arabic origin. It actually is Habashi. And it actually means beautiful. You know, beautiful, beautiful. So the moment Rasulullah ﷺ looks at this child, he says, oh, look at this girl, you know, basically saying, oh, beautiful, beautiful. And she remembers this because when she came back to Medina, at the time the Prophet ﷺ had already passed away, والسلام, and she's saying that I remember coming here with my father, and the Prophet ﷺ, the moment he saw me, I was wearing this yellow dress, and he kept saying, Sana, Sana. And then when she came closer to the Prophet ﷺ, she started playing with the seal of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ had a seal of, you know, it had two hair coming out of it. And this was the seal of the prophethood. And same thing as we know from Salman Farsi wanted to look at that. And there, you know, there's a whole, many hadith regarding the seal of the Prophet ﷺ. And she started playing with it. And so the Prophet ﷺ, so her father was saying, yani, he was kind of getting irritated. What are you doing? You know, and this is the Prophet and things like this. While the Prophet ﷺ is saying, and he was saying, wear and tear, do what you want to do. No problem. Do what you want to do. Meaning, but if you didn't have that kind, you know, imagine you coming back and imagine the memories that you have about Rasulullah ﷺ, about who he was and about how he cared and about his personality. So inshallah, brothers and sisters, inshallah, we'll end it here and we'll take some question. Actually, one of the things I don't want to forget is that when my father, she says that when my father kind of reproached me saying, what are you doing? You know, this is Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He said, Daha ya Rasulullah, Daha ya, leave her alone, leave her alone. Why are you saying what she's doing? Let her do what she's doing. And then he kept saying, Abli wa akhli, meaning wear and tear, do what you're doing. And he said it 3 different times. That do what you're doing. Don't worry about what your father's saying right now. You know, someone that young. So, brothers and sisters, inshallah, this was just the emotional bonds that the Prophet built with the children of Medina. Inshallah, we have 3 more sessions, so that now we'll go into the bravery side and we'll go into, as I said, sexual relations. We'll go into finally the summary of a lot of these people that we mentioned, whether it was Ali radiallahu anhu, Abdullah ibn Zubayr, and Abdullah ibn Umar, and Anas ibn Malik, and some of the others that we'll be mentioning. You will see that these people went out to be the real nobles of this ummah and also humanity, that humanity can look up to them and be proud. Even the kuffar would want to look up those children today and want their children to be like them when it comes to manhood or womanhood, and when it comes to being mothers and fathers, when it comes to being soldiers and generals and scholars. You know, Abdullah ibn Masud, someone who was such of nobody in society, young man, just a shepherd, goes on to become a scholar, goes on to become a wali of Yemen, or part of Yemen, goes on to be somebody that the Ahnaf or the Hanafi school emerges out of till today. Abdullah ibn Masud, and goes on to all of the scholars that we see till today in the Hanafi school, or what became known as the Iraqi school. Right? We have the Iraqi and the Hijazi school. This became the Iraqi school. So these are the people the Prophet ﷺ built. So if you have any questions, inshallah, brothers and sisters, let's take your questions. Bismillah ta'ala. Jazakumullah khair for having patience and listening.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallahu khairan, Sheikh Shirazi, for this discussion for this class. Inshallah, again, we're opening the floor for any of the brothers and sisters that have any thoughts, insights, questions. Feel free to unmute your mic, inshallah. Or if your mic is not working, then of course we're checking the chat as well.
Do you have any questions? If not, we can end the class here. Oh, there is.
Okay. Yes, we're getting a question right now. This is from the brother Yasin. Says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, Jazakallahu khairan for the lecture. I have 2 questions here. Can you repeat the lesson of the hadith with the woman who made the zina and became pregnant? She approached Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The second is that you said a man has to act like a child next to his family, but became a man when it comes to salah and jihad. Is this correct? So the first one, again, is the brother's asking if you can repeat the hadith with the woman who she committed zina and she approached Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam about this to receive the hajj.
Yeah, the first thing regarding I'll just take the easy one first, which is Umar ibn Khattab. This is a statement from Umar ibn Khattab. Umar ibn Khattab used to say to men, be like a child, a baby at home. You know, because, you know, nowadays, brothers, we see where men are lions at home and are like clowns on the street. They will not defend their daughters. They will not defend their wives. They will not defend the woman. They will not defend the weak, but they will show their manlyhood or supposed manhood, whatever it is, in their homes, beating the wives, beating the children. And so what he's saying is that, look, when you go home, you should be somewhat responsible men, brothers and sisters, you don't have to go and tell people I'm responsible. You're responsible because people know you are responsible, just the way who you are. Just the way you are. Just the way you take care of things, just the way you take care of responsibilities, just the way all the bills are paid, just the way your business is run, just the way you care about your team, just the way you carry yourself. You know. So when I go home, I don't have to show that I am this way or that way. No, people already know what this person is about. So when I go home, I am like, I want to be happy with my wife. I want to go and have fun in the house. I don't want my children. There is a hadith that I didn't go over today, but I will go over next time, which is the Prophet ﷺ, he said, there are men that come to the house. When they come to the house, the children, let's say if they are having fun and they are, everybody's kind of, the home is, things are having, and all of a sudden when they hear that the man came back to the house, the father, the children go into the hiding, and the women stop talking, and everybody is, summun bukmun umyun. It's like this. And the Prophet ﷺ actually said about a man like that this is not from us. This man is not from us. Why is that? Shouldn't this be the other way? When your daughter or your children see you coming home, said, "Oh, Baba, Baba." But so that's the point that he's making. And then he said the end of the aqwal, as we say, the statement, or is one of the statements. At the end, he says, but when the call came, when the call to responsibility comes, then he behaves like a man. Whatever that responsibility is that he has to take care of, whether it's his household responsibility, whether it's paying the bills, whether it's a call for jihad, whether it's call for adhan, la ilaha illallah, let's go, time to salli, to go to salah, whether it's time to take care of the affairs of the ummah, whether it's time to stand up and speak the haqq. You have to say the haqq, say the truth. Whether speaking the haqq to the oppressor, whether it's speaking the haqq to someone who acts like who doesn't understand what it means to take care of people, or so that's a man, not the other way around, where he has all of those qualities, but at home he's like that, and outside, oh, I don't want trouble, brother. And then when it comes to the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, that it's a very famous hadith, you can look it up also, inshallah, which is the woman when she came and she said to the Prophet ﷺ that she had committed zina, and she said it 4 times. So she actually said, yes, I did, yes, I did, yes, I did, and she was married. So the Prophet ﷺ actually told her to first to go have the child. So because she was pregnant, and then she went and she had the child. She came back. When she came back, actually, what the hadith, the way it's said is that the Prophet ﷺ kind of looked the other way many times, because he was kind of saying that, that you don't have to go and incriminate yourself. Because there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that if Allah has hidden a sin from you, then let Allah, He covered it for you. You don't have to go and display to the whole earth, I did this. No, you don't have to do that. And if no one knows, then no one knows. Even there's a statement of Ahmad bin Hanbal, where he used to say that, the responsibility for him was not like he would go and incriminate people and say, if he saw some people doing wrong, okay, now take him to the qadi, take him to the court, and let's get him whipped, and let's get him. No, he would enjoy the good and forbid the evil. The responsibility, now, unless that's a person who belongs to the state, he's a judge, he's a police, he's somebody, qadi is from the misbah and things like that, that's different. When he sees something wrong, they have to correct it. The scholar, he corrects it, but he doesn't punish. That's not in his hand. Now, what happened in this case, the Prophet ﷺ, when she came and she said it 1, 2, 3, 4 times, now he's responsible. He has to do the punishment. But in this case, he waited. She had the baby. Then he waited. He gets the breastfeeding for 2 years, and then he told her to come back. And then she did come back after all of that time, even though she didn't have to. It wasn't that she was being held or anything like that. Then she came back, and the had was put on her. Is this clear?
Okay, inshallah. We have another question from Sister Sarah. Assalamu alaikum. Would you say that starting with the children with food is sunnah rather than what we see in Asian cultures where the men start first?
I'm sorry, what? Food?
Yeah. So I think she's saying
It's okay,
would you
the man
say-
doesn't have to eat at all. What kind of nonsense is this? I'm sorry, you know, what is this? It's Asian culture is not our culture, and neither the Arabic culture or the African culture or the American culture or the whatever culture is not our culture. Our culture is Islam, and we show mercy to the weak. The first ones that should be taken care of are the people who usually are not taken care of. And this was the thing. I mean, now, of course, you know, there are certain things, like I was in Afghanistan. Of course, you don't see the woman at all in Afghanistan. Yeah, when we were invited to eat many places. Alhamdulillah, man, I miss that place. I gotta go back. Now, we were invited to eat in many homes, but you don't see the woman. You know, but because the women don't come in front of the men and they don't come in front of the guests and things like that. But yes, they cook and they eat in their side and the men are eating on their side. No, unless, you know, that's the thing. But in general, no, brothers and sisters. I mean, it cannot be that, you know, all the other, because I saw that even in India, for instance, the men will eat and they will eat everything. And whatever is left of, you know, last, whatever, is then given to the woman and then given to children. Where did this come from? While you look at the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, Rasulullah first brings the children, gives them the food, gives them the fruits, gives them the dates, and then after that, the adults are taken care of. Now, I'm not saying don't have respect of the elderly, and usually, you know, these are customs. You know, there's customary issues. There are customs where, you know, the elderly of the community or in general are taken care of first, and that's also to teach certain type of respect to children, that the elderly do have rights. But the problem now, what is becoming is that the elders, yeah, they leave no food for the children. But it should be taught this way again, brothers and sisters. Look, it's respect, manners need to be taught properly. If the children know that, look, the elderly here, meaning those who cannot, you know, they're in a situation where they need to be taken care of first. I'm not talking about the 21, 22, 25, 30, 40, 45-year-olds are sitting there eating, everything is done. And then whatever is left is given to, here, go ahead, eat. Usually there's nothing left even. And I've seen that with my eyes. So customs need to be taught properly if that's a custom. Next question.
Okay, so we have the brother Yasin again. He's saying Jazakallah khairan for repeating. Due to the fact I'm in Germany, some of the points are sometimes too fast. Yeah. So now we have another question from Sister Farah Fatima. Assalamu alaikum. This shows that character building of children is mainly dependent on the father's role rather than the mother's, because in the current time, wholly and solely, it becomes the mother's job. The fathers work harder, so they need rest and peace when arriving home.
Okay, so hold on. Responsibility is on the father. He is the head of the household. Doesn't matter how tired he is. You can't be so tired when you come home. You know, of course, there are times that, you know, the father is working all day, things like that. But look, sister, if the man is responsible, he has already made sure that he married the right woman. There is an understanding between the father and the mother, and the husband and the wife. The wife knows her responsibility of what needs to be done to make sure the children grow up properly. The father knows that, look, I need to make sure that she's comfortable. She has the money, the means that are needed to make sure that my children grow up properly, meaning that they are learning the deen. I have a teacher, or if not, my wife knows how to teach Quran to my children. She will take care of them in that way. He knows that he comes back, that there is not let's say if there is no food in the house, she didn't cook that day, but because she was teaching his children tajweed and Quran, because let's say you have 2, 3, 4, 5 children, they need to be taught the Quran, they need to be taught Tawheed, they need to be taught Islam, they need to be taught, they're growing up, they need to learn the Sharia rulings as they grow up, depending on what age they are. She's taking the time to do that, and she forgot to cook or things like that. These are things, if you have that type of responsibility between and understanding between each other, fine. But if not, the husband, doesn't matter how tired he is, the responsibility will go back to him. If the children grow up to be people who are, you know, that you don't even, that inshallah not, but let's say if, you know, if they don't grow up the way you wanted them to be, then the responsibility first goes to the father, then to the mother. Because the ayah is, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. All you who believe, is talking to a man. Protect yourself and then protect your family. Ahli, your family, your wife, and then your children. Nara, from the nar. So responsibility is on the man, but understanding should be between the husband and the wife. And brothers and sisters, in the times that we are living in, the parents, you know, because I see this, brothers and sisters, that, you know, the sister became a doctor. She has so much responsibility. She will give the best time of her life to the, you know, her time to the to her patients, to her this, to that. The father is working 8 to 5. The children are being taken care of by a babysitter, who's in 99% of the time a kafira. Then you tell me, you think the children are going to grow up with Islamic concepts, or concepts that are basically the babysitters become the mother? So if the akhirah is your concern, many people today are even worried whether their children's children will be Muslim in this country, or in the West especially, because the children are growing up with grandparents, not even parents. If grandparents, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, at least the grandparent will take care. But in society here, many of them grow up with babysitters. So these are, especially now, where, look at the societies that we live in. Subhanallah. Go ahead.
So if we have any more questions, inshallah, we have a few minutes left in the class period. So inshallah, you can send them in again. You can unmute yourself as well if you just like to ask it directly.
Two minutes? Yes, inshallah, let's give it another minute or so. If you have any questions, please ask. You know, if you have any suggestions, please suggest also. The point is, in some places, I'm very blunt, because what we are observing around us constantly, especially dealing with children every day, you know, like we had a refugee family that come to us, and after about 2 months, family was telling me, oh, the father came in the office and said, oh, why are you teaching our kids this Islam all the time? You know, we just sent our children here so they can learn English. And then I said to him, we are teaching English, but your children need to know Islam. But we are doing it through teaching them English language. You're also teaching them Islam. So basically, the children were changing. Girls were starting to wear hijab and things like this. The father pulled the children out of the center. 6 months, 7 months passed by, almost a year. I remember last year summer, he came to me and he said, Sheikh Shirazi, we have to talk. I said, what happened? He said, no, can you take my, well, no, you need to come to the house first. I said, what's going on? First thing he said is that my daughter called police on me. And so I was in the prison last night, but she didn't put any charges, but police came anyway and they took me in and things like this. I sat in the prison last night, but you need to come and talk to my kids, something like that. And then he's telling me when I go home, they said, okay, also, can you do nikah for my daughter and such and such, such and such. And I looked at him for a moment and I was looking and I said, when we were teaching, your problem was that we were teaching them Islam, but you wanted to teach them English. Nothing wrong with teaching them English. They have to live in the society. They have to obviously know the language. But brothers and sisters, there's priorities. You want your children to grow up, make the money, do all of those things, but be jahil. And then when Jahiliyyah comes with all of its forces, now let's go back and say, oh, fix this. Can you do nikah fast? Can you do, my daughter called police on me because you taught them culture. You taught them American culture. Police is coming to the house and is telling your daughter, you have a right to have a boyfriend. And calling the father does not have the right to say, then he says, okay, what is he going to say? Get out of my house to his daughter? Go ahead.
All right, inshallah. We have 2 questions here. One person is raising their hand. So inshallah, you can unmute.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullah khair for the lecture. I just wanted to shed light on, we always learn, alhamdulillah, we always have all these channels to learn, but I think a lot of times we lack action. And if the Sheikh inshallah can maybe give us some homework. As parents, we always learn something new, or as kids, as the children in the class, inshallah, you learn something new. It's not aib, it's not bad to actually say, I learned something new today and I want to practice it in the best way I know how. And if the Sheikh can, give homework to the parents, go do what you're supposed to do with what you just learned. Inshallah, that's what I wanted to just add to what you guys are saying. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa
rahmatullah. No, Jazakallah khair, sister. That's something that we will do. Yes, why not? We can work on this. I think the number one thing is the reading list. We need to put up there. We did share some of the books. I hope that you invest in those books. One of the things, brothers and sisters, is invest in books and read them. Build a library in the house. The children, when they're growing up, when they see the parents doing something constantly, it's one of those things in the children that they think this is something very important. So when they see a father, the mother constantly having a book in their hand, they're reading, they're thinking, they're discussing ideas, concepts, issues, concerns, events. I always like what's happening in Jenin, for instance. We had a whole discussion with the family that, look, what's happening in Jenin and why is this happening in Jenin? 130 or so young brothers, 13, 14, 19, 2-year-olds were killed. For what reason? Why are the Muslims of Jenin are resisting? What's going on? What's the history of Palestine? Why do we call Palestine occupied? Why is the Israeli army, so-called Israelis, doing what it's doing? Who allowed them to do that? How come the Muslims today can't respond properly? So reading of the books is important because that will build the habit of reading for your children. Discussing ideas is important, especially if they are at a certain age where they can look at abstract things. We were abstract ideas. Sometimes it's hard when they're too young. But for instance, in a course that we have here, we have a whole discussion that we were doing on principles of thinking. Why should we build concepts of how to think in the minds of the youth? It's very important. So what I would say is pick up a book and give your children the habit of reading. Read up on how to build that habit, and make sure that take your children to bookstores. And of course, I understand even going to the bookstores nowadays is unbelievable. The kind of garbage that we see in the bookstores, but you can order them. So again, even if it's small, have some type of a library at home. And make sure that you have reading time. Check the books, obviously, that your children are reading, but have reading time. So that gives them some type of a, habit of reading. Inshallah. Go ahead. But we will, next time I'll start putting homework on. Why not?
All right, inshallah. We have one more question. Last question, inshallah, from Sister Lubna. Please, can you shed more light on the responsibilities of grandparents? Sometimes parents and grandparents have different views in the upbringing and bringing up children, even though both are coming at it from an Islamic perspective.
So if you think about it, brothers and sisters, the whole time that we were talking about Hassan Hussein, Muhammad Sallallahu Rasul Sallallahu, he's a grandfather. He's a grandfather, and he is the one, and Hassan and Hussein, Shababu Ahlul Jannah. This is a hadith of the Prophet Sallallahu, right? They are from the, they will be the young, they're the young youth of Jannah, for instance. So yes, that is very important that the grandparents play a role in teaching children Islam. I do understand the dynamics, especially if sometimes we see that the grandparents grew up in this very secular, non-Islamic societies. Some of the grandparents may not even be Muslim. And if some grandparents are Muslim, but Islam was not the number one thing in their minds. But brothers and sisters, that look, now we don't have that luxury. So one of the things that I would really push is that there are family meetings in which what's happening to children in this society be discussed. Grandparents, I don't think they have, sometimes, they may not understand the kind of influences that their grandchildren are dealing with. Homosexuality was not pushed the way it's being pushed today. And inshallah, I think this would become a reason for a lot of parents to actually come back to Islam, because I see that parents come to me and they say, hey man, Sheikh, how do we explain this to our kids? How do we make sure, how do we define love? What is love? How do we define the relationship between man and a woman? When should we discuss this? Did the Prophet ﷺ discuss these things, and how did he do that? Now the point is that if they realize what's happening out there on the streets, they may come to a conclusion that it's very important that your children grow up with some type of conceptual framework, meaning they actually understand Islam the way it is. And the reason why I'm saying that, brothers and sisters, is that when we get a lot of kids at the center, some kids may have a lot of Quran memorized, a lot of surah from the Quran memorized. They are very good with tajweed and this and that. But you ask them a simple question, how do you know Allah Azza wa Jal exists? No one can answer. There's like, no one can answer anything. How do we know the Quran is the book of Allah Azza wa Jal? They don't know. How do you know Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is a messenger of Allah? They don't know. How do you know that there is, okay, Jibreel exists, Jannah and Jahannam exist? They don't know. But they have a lot of Quran memorized. So that's one thing we're dealing with. And on the top of that, you're dealing with concepts, atheism, right? The growth of godlessness in this society, where kids are growing up, are being told, you don't have to believe. So we have to come out and say, okay, is there a need to believe? Is there a need for guidance? Is there a need for messengers? If I think the grandparents understand that we are at a point where if they don't help and the parents are not involved, we are at a point where it is, the fear is that your children's children may not be Muslims. And you look at what happened to African Americans, brothers and sisters. Why do that's a story that will come to what happened and how Islam was removed from original Africans that came to this country. So please make sure that they understand that it's not like back home. Now you're at a point where children, if not their children, may Allah forbid, may not be Muslims because they never understood the deen. They would say, oh yeah, my grandfather, finally, I'll say a few things. Just yesterday, we had a Bosnian brother that came here at the center, he was discussing something. He said, brother, 65,000 families came to Chicago from Bosnia. 65,000 families when the refugee crisis began, when the slaughtering of the Muslims was taking place in Bosnia. July 11th, by the way, was the anniversary of the massacre of Srebrenica. So hopefully the Muslims actually remember what happened, things like that. And we were discussing this, and he was telling me, Akhi, out of 65,000 families that came to this country from Bosnia, Kosovo, Albania, this whole, I can tell you 99% of those families today, if you look at their children, you will not know whether they are Muslims. And we have failed, especially the Bosnian community, really failed to make sure that our children actually know the deen of Allah. And on the other hand, if it's other communities, it's only the cultural Islam that they know. Intellectual, conceptual deen, the way it is, we are not working on that. That's what's going to save the children, not the culture of the Arab culture or this culture, that culture. So a lot to work on and very serious issues. Inshallah. May Allah protect our children, protect us, protect our families. ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وثبت أقدامنا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Another habit, brothers and sisters, please read Quran in front of your children as much as you can. Please make them realize how much you care for the book of Allah. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.